From Hollywood, almost live, it's the Gong Show.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your host and the star of our show, the delectably dangerous
Dubious Khan talking about what's on the TV. Maybe smart and surreal, or really just stupid and sleazy. Talking about all the good and bad the boob tube ever had. Come along and take a look into the idiot box. Come along and take a look into the idiot box.
Greetings all, I'm Dubious Khan, and welcome into the Idiot Box, a showcase of the best, worst, and weirdest that television has to offer. The late 1970s television landscape was a little unusual. With the country emerging from both Vietnam and the Watergate scandal, and the sexual revolution being in full force, TV producers often found themselves kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, between trying to come up with content that was fitting the new social trends, while also having to fight against more conservative-minded executives at the networks who still thought it was 1957. In the midst of all this came one of TV's most legendary, brilliant madmen who created new life for the flagging game show format. We are, of course, talking about the legendary Chuck Barris. Chuck Barris, the self-proclaimed game show king, began his career as a page at NBC before ultimately working on American Bandstand for ABC. He was eventually promoted to programming at ABC for their daytime department and immediately found himself appalled by the various pitches for game shows he was receiving, telling his superiors he could come up with better game show concepts than what he was seeing. To which they suggested Barris quit programming and become a producer instead. This led to Barris's first major hit, The Dating Game, which premiered in 1965 and ran for 11 years. Barris followed this up with The Newlywed Game, which lasted even longer, running for 19 years with no interruptions. But it was in 1976 when Barris would bring us his most infamous creation, a talent show with very little talent. And in hindsight, it proved to be oddly prophetic as to where television was going to go about 30 years later. This is The Gong Show. Allegedly coming to Barris's mind after a remark he made about how the ultimate game show would be one where the losing contestant was killed, The Gong Show has a fairly basic concept. It's a talent show, but one where the acts are either weird, terrible, or both.
Hypnotize inanimate objects. So you people at home, keep your impressionable furniture away from the TV sets. I will now hypnotize a balloon. To prove that the balloon is hypnotized, I will give it the needle test. Watch my hands. You're getting sleepy. Sleepy, drowsy, sleepy, asleep. The balloon is asleep. I will now give it the needle test and if the balloon... The balloon will awake and burst.
I chopped down trees, I ate my lunch, I goes to the lavatory. On Wednesdays I go shopping, have buttered scones for tea. Oh, I'm a lumberjack and that's okay. I sleeps all night and works all day. He chops down trees, he skips and jumps, he likes to cut wildflowers. He puts on women's clothing and hangs around in bars. Oh, I'm a lumberjack and that's okay. I sleeps all night and works all day. I chops down trees, wear high heels, suspenders, and a bra. I wished I'd done.
Now, the way the contest works is actually really simple. Each contestant goes on stage and performs their act. If they're able to get through their entire act without one of the judges gonging them, then each of the 3 celebrity judges gives them a score of 1 to 10, which is then combined for a possible total maximum of 30 points. Highest score of the day wins the coveted Gong Trophy and a check for $516.32, which is either an arbitrary number or, rumor has it, was the Screen Actors Guild's standard pay rate for one day's work at that time. Now, there were two versions of the Gong Show that aired. There was a network version on NBC and there was a syndicated version. And the syndicated version was able to give out more money, the original amount being something like $705.12, but gradually increasing to $716 and the ubiquitous 32 cents of the original network version. Of course, for some viewers, even the winners probably didn't deserve that much.
For our next trick, from this pan of very hot fire, I'm going to produce my pet chicken, Charlie. Oh, here we go. My pet chicken, Charlie.
Sul mare luccica l'astro d'argento, la donna prospera il vento. Sul mare luccica l'astro d'argento, lascia l'onda, prospera il vento.
Where did he rascal? Where did he go? Was he? Ah, Charlie. Charlie left. Charlie! Charlie, come back! Charlie! Charlie, come back here! He's out in the parking lot, folks.
Gong of the title, if any of the three judges found the act currently playing to be completely horrible, they could get up and ring the gong in order to bring an end to it immediately and disqualify the contestant. Now, the rules of the game required the judges to wait a minimum of 30 seconds before they could ring the gong, and some judges loved playing this up if they hated the act immediately. Sometimes standing up there, hefting the mallet that they would use to strike the gong, hovering over by it ominously, and some judges even took this one step further with another judge getting up to try to prevent the original judge from ringing the gong in the first place. It never worked. The judges of the Gong Show were generally minor celebrities that rotated out from time to time. The original three judges were comedians Jamie Farr and Artie Johnson, and singer J.P. Morgan, who was one of the most popular judges during the show's run. In fact, it was J.P. Morgan that contributed what is widely considered one of the two factors that led to NBC canceling the network version of the show, and started a whole bunch of Barris's problems with the network. In one of the most infamous moments in Gong Show history, J.P. did this. Yeah, that actually aired on daytime network television, although, of course, reruns had the flashing edited out later. But this was not the only controversy the Gong Show engendered. In fact, its most famous scandal came about because of an old trick that goes around in television. It's widely known that in order to get stuff past the censors, you need to put something in your show even bigger and brasher and bolder, so they'll insist that gets taken out, thus letting what you actually want to reach the air to come through. Chuck Barris applied the same principle to the Gong Show, packing in the show with occasional bait acts, which were designed for the censors to take out, while the other more borderline acts were able to make it to air. This, however, backfired on him with an act known as Brother Can You Spare a Nickel, but which went down in TV history more infamously as the Popsicle Twins.
Do it! Do it!
JP Morgan.
Do you know that that's the way I started?
See that? 2, 3.
10!
A 10. That gives you a 12. Thanks a lot, old. Get off the stage, you rotten kids. We'll be back. Oh, you have a 12. We'll be back for more stuff right after this message.
Now, this episode did make it to air on the Eastern Time Zone, but immediately backlash came in and forced NBC to pull the episode from the remaining time zones in the country on that day. As a result, or so rumor has it, NBC told Barris to straighten up and fly right and started adhering to network guidelines for daytime programming. But because the ratings of the show were actually pretty good at this time, Barris figured they were just bluffing and continued on his merry way. It did not end well. More on that in a minute. In addition to the competing acts, the Gong Show also featured a selection of recurring acts that didn't compete in competition. If you've never seen the show before, if an act, no matter how terrible, doesn't get gonged and also doesn't get scored, it's a non-competing act. These acts usually came up again and again, such as Larry and his magic instrument. The gag, of course, here is that Larry claims he's going to play whatever instrument he has, but never actually does. There were, however, more famous bits that came out of the Gong Show. Murray Langston, a stand-up comedian who had performed in several variety shows during the 70s, got a major bump to his career thanks to the Gong Show with the creation of a character known, ironically enough, as the Unknown Comic.
Ladies and gentlemen, here comes the Wizard of Whoopee, the Unknown Comic. Hey, all right, I know you all feel about the first station. I can't even say it. Okay, don't hold in your laughs, folks. It creates gas. That's right, the more laughs you hold in, the more gas you create. You only end up spoiling the evening for everyone. So everybody, give me an H. Give me an A. Give me an H. Give me an A. What's it spell? There, don't you feel better? I gotta tell you, I haven't been feeling too good myself. I went to this Hollywood party last week. Wilt Chamberlain was there. I thought I'd be cool. I said, hey, Wilt, how's the weather up there? He said it's raining and he spit on me. Well, it could have been worse. I was in this restaurant yesterday, right? Waiter comes over, he has his thumb on my steak. I said, what are you doing with your thumb on my steak? He said, I didn't want to drop it again. Hey, Jackie baby, come here. What? You're lucky I made it here today. You know my car broke down? Yeah, the spark plugs wouldn't spark, the generator wouldn't gen, and the... Get out of here. Hey, stop. Hey.
The unknown comic was unquestionably the breakout character of The Gong Show, with Langston portraying the character on several other shows, in live performances, and eventually moving from being a recurring act on the show to being a judge. The character would also be used in a Playboy TV comedy special and the 1984 film Night Patrol. When NBC canceled The Gong Show, they allowed Chuck Barris to finish out his contract, which enabled him to finish producing the remainder of the shows for the season. This also allowed them to use one of the other recurring segments, Chucky's Fables, as the framework for the final network TV episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our last show. This is our last show. So we want to do a fable for you, for all you people. So if you'll just get yourself cozy in your little beds and scrunch up to your partner or whatever else you scrunch up to, your little bunny or something, we want to tell you about the land of Ferb and a guy named Fenwick Goddard. He was generally hit upon by the local police. I have an idea. The king said,
"What kind of an idea?"
And Fenwick said, "A talent show with one great act after another to entertain you and your subjects." And the king said,
"Great!"
Despite the framework, the episode continued as normal with one exception. For the first time, Barris didn't host, giving that over to a character within the so-called story being told. Instead, Barris appeared for the first time on stage as a competing act.
Ladies and gentlemen, here comes an act. I've never seen them before. I hear they're real good. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hollywood Cowboys.
1, 2, 3, 4, take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. My woman left, she took all the reason that I've been working for. You better not stand in the way when I go walking through that door. You better take this job and shove it, honey. I'm working here no more.
And appropriately enough, he got gonged.
Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. My woman left, she took all the reason that I've been working for. You better not stand in the way when I go walking through that door. You better take this job and shove it.
You were gone. Jamie Farr, why did you do that?
That little fella's been saying I've been long a nose. I'm also long a gong, fella. Long a gong.
Of course, some would argue that Barris's hosting of the show was enough to get him gonged. Despite working most of his adult life in television, Barris never really appeared on camera and was really uncomfortable. The Gong Show was the only production of his that he actually hosted. As a result, it wasn't long before his nervous tics while he was hosting kind of became hallmarks of the show. These tics often included odd pauses in conversation, pointing for no good reason, and clapping his hands while he tried to figure out what he was going to say next. It wasn't long before the audience was good-naturedly ribbing Barris for these tics.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a man who has played musical instruments all over the world. And now he has a new one. He is the finest jazz musical saw player around. So ladies and gentlemen, here it comes. Ladies and gentlemen, here it comes.
Of course, as with any talent show, the question becomes, did anybody who ever appeared on The Gong Show actually find any legitimate success? And surprisingly, the answer is yes. Two of the biggest successes to come out of The Gong Show were Andrea McArdle and Cheryl Lynn. McArdle, after appearing on an early 1976 episode of The Gong Show, would go on to land the role of Annie on Broadway. Lynn received a recording contract as a result of her appearance and went on to record the top 40 hit, Got to Be Real. One act in particular would start off as a typically weird Gong Show act, but would eventually mutate and shorten its name to become one of the biggest rock bands of the 80s.
The Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo.
We will now play the rarely performed Haydn Trio for piano, accordion, and triangle. Thank you.
NBC canceled the network version of The Gong Show in 1978, the syndicated version continued on until 1980. This version's cancellation is partially explained by another Barris game show project, Three's a Crowd, wherein the concept was a man, his wife, and his secretary would all go on the show, and the wife and the secretary would answer questions about him to determine which one of them actually knew him better. The resulting natural backlash from this concept, Barris later claimed, took not only Three's a Crowd, but 3 of his other shows off the air, of which The Gong Show was one of them. Barris fell into a depression after this and vanished from TV for a while and wouldn't be seen again until 1985 when the Newlywed Game got a revival, giving him another hit. The Gong Show, while only lasting about 4 years, became a cult TV hit with reruns cropping up all over cable throughout the 80s and 90s. Several revivals of the show were attempted over the years, including a 1-season syndicated series in 1988. Game Show Network aired Extreme Gong in October of 1998 until the same month in 1999. Sony Pictures Television produced 2 pilots of a new version for the WB a few years after Extreme Gong, but it was never picked up. Comedy Central fared better in 2008, airing The Gong Show with Dave Attell, but it only lasted 8 weeks and was never heard from again. And surprisingly, summer of 2017 saw a 10-episode revival of The Gong Show on ABC, produced by Will Arnett and starring British comedian Jimmy Maitland. It is generally believed, but never actually confirmed, that Maitland is in fact a character portrayed by comedian Mike Myers. And yes, the 2017 version does have acts that would fit right at home on the original series.
Oh my God, is the cake gonna go in her cooch? Is the cake gonna go in her cooch? I thought she was gonna stuff it right in there.
I might have an erection right now. I do. Sorry, go ahead. Okay.
Whether you think it was brilliant or stupid, edgy or tasteless, funny or just plain weird, you can't deny that The Gong Show is a truly unique entry in the annals of game show history. Reruns still show up on cable from time to time, and if you look online, you'll find a few clips and possibly some full episodes here and there if you're curious. If you're really kind of tired of all the nonsense from shows like The Voice or America's Got Talent, give The Gong Show a try as a palate cleanser. I think you'll have fun. I'm Dubious Khan. Join me next time for another trip into... Oh, yes! That can only be Gene! The Dancing Machine!